I never liked the way the steel door groaned when it closed behind you. It didn't just shut you in, it buried you. It buried you beneath years of rage, of regret, and in my case, a truth I never told anyone, not even my crew, not even my blood, not yet. They called me Bloodhound back then. Not because I was part of the Bloods, though I ran with them, but because once I got your scent, I didn't stop until you were on the floor, cold. I earned that name. I wore it like a crown and a curse. When I first got to Rikers, I had one goal: survive. But survival wasn't just about making it to the next day. It was about power. I already had a name before I got locked up, so the prison world was just another jungle to conquer. That's what I told myself. But if I'm being honest, the minute they shut that cell behind me, part of me knew this place was going to break me in ways the streets never could. People think I went down for murder. I didn't. At least, that's not what they wrote on the papers. Armed robbery, assault, weapons trafficking. They couldn't pin the murder. But the whispers followed me anyway. Everyone assumed I did it. The funny thing is, maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. There's more to that night than even I understood at the time, and the truth. It's uglier than anything that made it into court. I had just turned 24 when I got processed. 2 guards, Martinez and Dixon, flanked me down the hallway, boots echoing on cold cement. Martinez was the chatty one. Tried to make a joke about how I looked too young to be a boss. I didn't answer Dixon, though. He just stared. Quiet, but something behind his eyes told me he knew something. Something about me. "You remember me, Bloodhound?" said when we stopped in front of the cell. I looked him up and down. Tall, pale, a scar across his cheek like he'd taken a bottle to the face once. I shook my head. "You will," he muttered, unlocking the cell. I stepped inside. The door clanged behind me. That sound never leaves you. There were already 2 guys in. They're both younger. One was sketching something on the wall with a pencil stub. The other was doing push-ups so fast his palms were red. They stopped when I came in. Looked at me like they'd seen a ghost. "Hear him?" the pencil kid whispered. "Bloodhound." "My name's Michael," I said. He blinked. "Right. Michael." Mystery number 1. Why did Dixon know me? Why did he say "you will like it" was a promise? Mystery number 2. How did this kid know more about me than I ever told the courts? What exactly were people saying on the outside? And there was another thing. Something that still haunts me. That night, the one that got me locked up, I remember flashes. Not the whole night. Just parts. Gun in my hand. A scream. A voice I thought I'd never hear again. ... Silence. A silence so loud, I hear it every night when I close my eyes. Something happened that night. Something I forgot, or buried. But it's clawing its way back. And this place is going to drag it into the light. My first night in that cell was filled with shadows. Not just the ones cast by the flickering fluorescent lights, but the kind that creep in from your past when there's nowhere left to run. The 2 kids I shared that concrete box with were quiet after I arrived, as if my presence changed the air. I tried to sleep, but the bed was just a metal sheet with a mat thinner than a prayer, and my mind was anything but still. I kept replaying Dixon's voice in my head, "You will." That wasn't just a throwaway line. That man remembered something about me that I couldn't recall, and that was a problem. I don't like loose ends, and I sure as hell don't like not remembering my own past. In the dark, the kid with the pencil kept drawing. I could hear the scratch of graphite on concrete. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I sat up. "What are you doing?" I asked, not really expecting an answer. He hesitated, then said he liked to draw angels. Said he thought maybe if he drew enough of them, one might show up for real. I didn't laugh. It's not because I believed him, but because I knew what it was like to need anything to believe in. The other one, the one with the relentless push-ups, finally spoke up. Said his name was Kev. Said he knew who I was. Because his older brother used to run with my crew. Told me there was a story about Mia, about what happened the night I got caught that nobody could figure out. Said some people thought I went down to protect someone. Said others thought I had flipped and made a deal. I didn't respond. Not because I couldn't, but because I wasn't sure which version of the story I believed anymore. That night, it was like trying to remember a dream after waking up. Slips through your fingers no matter how hard you try to hold on. The next morning, I was called out for orientation. You know the drill prison rules, who to avoid, what not to do unless you want a broomstick somewhere it don't belong. But it wasn't the guards that interested me. It was the other inmates. They watched me quietly, like animals watching a predator walk through their cage. Some nodded with respect, others with fear, few with hate, and then there was one. A man sitting in the back corner of the room, older, long gray dreads tied behind his back. His stare cut through me like ice. I didn't recognize him, but he looked at me like he knew my sins, like he had them written in a notebook. When it was over and everyone was being shuffled out, he walked past me and whispered one word: redemption. That word followed me all the way back to my cell. In prison, words are currency. That one felt expensive. That night, I dreamed of the girl again. She was screaming. I couldn't see her face, but her voice was soaked in betrayal. In the dream, I had a gun. I pointed it at someone. I think it was someone I once considered a brother, and then everything went black. When I woke up, my hands were shaking. Something happened that night, something worse than I wanted to admit. And every day inside this place felt like another step toward whatever truth I had buried in blood and fire. And I could feel it now. The truth was waking up. A week in, and the prison had started breathing on me. You could feel the rhythm of the place in your bones, the way it shifted with each new arrival. Each lockdown, each fight that broke out like clockwork in the yard. You start to recognize the patterns. Who walks where, who eats with who you never want to see walking toward you unless you're ready to bleed. But even in all that chaos, there were things that didn't make sense. One of them was Dixon. He'd linger near my cell during rounds, sometimes stopping to check the lock or pretend to adjust his belt, but I could feel his eyes on me. And the more I watched him, the more I became convinced that he wasn't just another bitter seal riding out his shift. He had a purpose, a personal one. There was something familiar in his face that I couldn't quite place, like a song you've heard before but can't remember the lyrics to. Then one day after chow, he passed me in the hallway and muttered something under his breath. Quick, like he didn't want to be heard. Her name was Elise. I froze. He didn't stop walking, just kept moving like nothing had happened. Elise. I hadn't heard that name in years. The moment it hit my ears, it was like a hole tore open in the fabric of my memory. A flash, her eyes filled with panic. My hand holding a gun, and the sharp sound of tires screeching on pavement. Then it was gone again, like someone pulling the shades down on my mind. Back in the cell, I couldn't sit still. The pencil kid Marky. I'd learned his name was asked if I was okay. I snapped at him, regretted it instantly. He was a strange one, always quiet, always sketching wings and halos and sometimes eyes. Hundreds of eyes. I asked him once why he drew so many. He said because something's always watching. Doesn't matter what you do, someone or something always sees. That night, I waited for lights out. After count, the place falls into a quiet chaos. Guys whispering through the bars. Deals being made, sometimes fights you only hear about the next day when someone's bed doesn't get made. But I wasn't interested in any of that. I had a plan. I wanted to find the man with the gray dreads. I'd heard whispers about him, some called him Bishop. Others said he was a lifer who used to run with the nation, but dropped out after some kind of epiphany. Some said he was crazy. Others swore he was a prophet. All I knew was that he looked at me like he was waiting for something. So I broke the first rule I'd made for myself in here. I asked questions. Prison has a way of punishing curiosity, and the next morning I found out just how deep the punishment could go. I woke up to find a razor blade taped under my pillow and a single piece of paper folded next to it. It said, "Ask again, and we'll cut more than your questions." That was the second mystery. Why would someone want to keep me away from a man who said one word: redemption? Why did my past keep leaking through these cracks? Why did Dixon know Elise's name? Why couldn't I remember what had happened to her? The walls were closing in, and I was running out of time. Whatever I'd done, whatever had happened the night I was arrested, wasn't just about me anymore. There were ghosts in this place, and they were starting to whisper. You don't ignore a razor under your pillow. That's not a threat. It's a warning. And in prison, warnings are usually your last chance. I didn't touch it. Just slid it off the mattress with a comb and flushed it down the toilet. But the paper? I kept that. Folded it twice, tucked it behind the light switch in the corner of the cell. That little piece of paper meant somebody was watching me close, closer than the guards, closer than Dixon. Someone on the inside didn't want me talking to Bishop. and that made me want to talk to him even more. In the yard that afternoon, I looked for him. The place was gray, always gray, and the sky had started to spit a slow drizzle that turned the concrete into a cold mirror. Bishop was there, sitting on the edge of the weight bench. Not lifting, not spotting, not talking, just ... watching. He saw me. I could tell by the way his eyes shifted ever so slightly. I waited for an opening, but every time I moved toward him, someone else got in the way. First, a group of skinheads started pushing each other near the fence. Then 2 Latin kings started throwing words about a missing package. By the time the guards stepped in to break it up, Bishop was gone. That night back in the cell, Kev finally asked me what was going on. I could see it in his face. He was torn between wanting to ride with me and wanting to stay out of whatever mess I was dragging in. That's how it goes in here. Loyalty is a luxury most can't afford. I didn't tell him about the note or the razor. I just told him I needed to talk to Bishop, and someone didn't want me to. He didn't flinch, just said, "Then you better do it fast. People have been disappearing lately, not dead, just gone, like they never existed." I asked what he meant. He looked at Marky, who had gone quiet, eyes flicking nervously back and forth between us. Kev leaned in. 2 weeks ago, this guy from D Black Reel, loudmouth named Reggie, he said he saw something in the old chapel, said Bishop was in there, talking to someone that wasn't there, said he heard names being spoken that no one was supposed to say. Next day, Reggie's gone, not in seg, not transferred, just gone. His bed cleared, his stuff boxed. Cause don't know nothing. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I believed in secrets. And prisons were full of them. Later that night during count, something strange happened. Dixon came to our cell alone, looked at me, really looked, and then did something no code does. He spoke without mocking, without smirking, without fear. You don't remember her, do you? It hit me like a punch to the ribs. It's not because of the question, but because I didn't know how to answer it. Part of me wanted to say yes, that I remembered every second of that night. I remembered Elise. But the truth was I didn't, not clearly. Her name opened something in me, sure, but it wasn't a full picture. Just shards. He stared a second longer, then slid something through the bars. A photo, worn, creased. Looked like it had been carried in someone's wallet for years. It was her. Elise. Big smile. Dimple in her cheek. A scar near her temple I never noticed before. And beside her, a man, Dixon. You did something to her, he said, and you're going to remember. Then he walked away. Stood there in the dark, photo shaking in my hand, while the weight of it all pressed down like a second prison. Something was wrong with my past, and this place was going to make sure I faced every piece of it, one secret at a time. I stared at the photo until the lights went out. Even after that, I kept seeing her face alive with that half smile, caught in the middle of a laugh. I didn't know where the picture had been taken, but the way Dixon stood beside her, it told me something I hadn't expected. He wasn't just some angry co who had a problem with me. He knew her. They were close. And if his words were true, then I'd hurt someone he cared about. Maybe worse. But that scar near her temple, I couldn't stop looking at it. Something about it tugged at the edges of my memory like a fingernail scratching at glass. I'd seen it before, in a different context. A hallway. Flashing lights, blood. My head throbbed just thinking about it. The next day I went looking for Bishop again. I tried during yard, again at Chow, even pretended to drop my tray just to scan the floor near his usual corner. Nothing. It was like he'd vanished. Which didn't make sense. He'd been a fixture here for years, by all accounts. I started asking careful questions. Low voice, short phrases. Only 2 guys I trusted from old connections. Most claimed ignorance. A few said Bishop had been moved to the old chapel wing. No one had seen him actually go. It was Marky who cracked first. After lights out, in the softest whisper you could imagine, he said the chapel wasn't used anymore. Not really. They held a few Sunday services when someone made noise about it, but it had been closed off for months after some kind of incident. I didn't know what happened, but he swore he heard voices down there at night, chanting, crying once. He said he heard someone speaking in a woman's voice, but when he looked out through the bars, there was no one there. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, we were locked in for an unscheduled cell check. The guards tore the place apart, flipping mattresses, searching for contraband. Standard procedure, but this time they were focused, like they were looking for something in particular. One of them even pulled the light switch plate off the wall. My heart stopped. The note. But it was gone. Someone had already taken it. Whoever had warned me was ahead of the game. Afterward, Kev pulled me aside in the hallway and told me he'd heard something new. One of the janitors old guy with a limp, said Bishop wasn't moved. He was still in the building, somewhere below the old chapel. There were rumors of a tunnel or service entrance that hadn't been used since the 70s, supposedly sealed. Supposedly. That evening, as the yard lights dimmed and the last round of chow trays clattered into the bins, I made up my mind. I was going to the chapel. Thank you for watching this far. Hopefully you are enjoying the video. If you are, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I waited until the middle of the night, then faked a stomach spasm loud enough to get the attention of the rotating CO. When the cell door opened and I was escorted to medical, I slipped a paperclip I'd palmed earlier into my waistband. Small, sharp, almost invisible. I wasn't trying to start a fight, I just needed a tool. I stalled in medical long enough to get sent back alone. A rare fluke that happens when a shift change overlaps. Instead of going straight back to my block, I veered off down the admin hallway and ducked into a janitor's closet. 5 minutes later, I slipped through the lower corridor toward the chapel wing. It was darker than the rest of the prison. No hum of fluorescent lights, no cameras I could see, just peeling walls and cold air that smelled like mold and old candle wax. At the end of the hall was a door, wooden, heavy, with a brass plaque that read Sanctuary. I pushed it open, and what I saw inside stopped me dead. It wasn't empty. It was full of candles, dozens of them lined in careful rows across the old pews. In the middle of the room sat Bishop, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees like he was in some kind of trance. And on the wall behind him, drawn in charcoal or ash, was a massive mural of a woman's face. Elise. But this Elise was different. Her eyes were hollow. She was crying blood. I didn't speak right away. Couldn't. The sight of Elise's likeness carved in soot and charcoal across the chapel. Walt took the words out of my mouth and froze them in the back of my throat. Bishop sat in front of it all like a priest guarding some sacred fire. He didn't look up, not even when the door creaked shut behind me. He just exhaled, slow and steady, like he'd known I was coming. "You've come far, Bloodhound," he said without opening his eyes. The nickname made me flinch. I hadn't heard it in that tone before, not as fear or respect, but pity, like a man talking to a wolf that had broken its own teeth trying to bite the chain. I told him I needed answers, that I didn't remember everything, that someone out there, maybe Dixon, maybe someone else, thought I'd done something to Elise, that I was starting to believe them. Bishop opened his eyes. They were tired, not weak, not scared, just burdened. "You don't remember," he said, "but the guilt is still in your marrow." I wanted to deny it, to push back, but something in me cracked a little. I didn't sit down. I just stood there, breathing heavy, fists clenched by my sides like I was trying to hold my own bones together. "Tell me what happened to her," I said. Bishop looked past me, toward the door, as if checking for ears in the shadows. Then he stood, slower than a man his size should have needed to, and walked to the mural. He raised one hand and pointed at the eyes. "She was the first one you let see you. The real you, not the mask, not the name, just Michael." I didn't argue. He was right. Elise had been that. The one person who met me before I wore colors, before the gang, before the blood on my hands had turned cold. We were kids. She was loud and brilliant and fire when I was nothing but smoke. She made me want something different. Then she was gone. "She came looking for you that night," Bishop said. "Not to stop you, not to beg, she came to save you. It's from yourself. She knew what you were walking into." I asked what happened. Bishop looked at me. "You pulled a gun? Someone else pulled theirs?" She stepped between. A warning shot went off. The second one didn't miss. I staggered back a step. I tried to picture it Elise in a parking lot or alley, her voice trying to break through the madness, my hand shaking. Someone else screaming, but the memory was fractured. There was something there, something just beyond my reach. "Was it me?" I asked. "Did I shoot her?" He paused. His silence cut deeper than any answer. "You don't get to know yet," he finally said. "Not until you're ready, and you're not ready." I moved forward, angry now, needing to break past the wall he'd put up. "Then why the mural? Why the blood in her eyes?" He looked back at the painting. "She died crying for you, but not in pain. In grief, you weren't who she believed you were. But she still loved you when she fell. The words burned in me. Then he handed me something. Small leather-bound notebook. Worn at the edges. It smelled like smoke and old wood. Inside were drawings. Charcoal sketches. Mostly Elise's face in different expressions. Some smiling, some furious, some broken. At the back was a single name written over and over again. Michael. 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 It was her handwriting. She carried that with her, Bishop said. Even when she knew you might not make it out alive. Even when the others told her to let go. I asked him how he knew her, how he knew any of this. He turned, and I saw the faint outline of an old tattoo on his neck. It was faded, but I recognized the symbol. He'd been a runner for my crew. Before I was even in charge. Back when I was still proving myself in alleys and cracked basketball courts. She saved me once too, he said. And I couldn't save her in return, so now I keep watch. Then he walked past me, toward the chapel door. Before he left, he said one last thing. If you want the whole truth, you'll need to go back to where it happened. But first, you need to make peace with the man you were. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with the mural, the candles, and the name that kept echoing louder with every step I took toward the truth. The next morning, I didn't speak to anyone. Not Kev, not Marky, not even during chow, which was saying something because that day. The kitchen managed to produce eggs that didn't taste like wet cardboard. My mind was back in the chapel, stuck on the pages of Elise's notebook and Bishop's final words, "Make peace with the man you were." Problem was, I didn't know who that man was anymore. All I had were fragments. A gun, a scream, a falling figure. And now, a new image Elise's notebook soaked in names and grief. I had to get to the truth, but every step forward felt like walking through a house that had already burned down. You know something happened. You can smell the ash, but you can't tell what started the fire. That night, when Kev finally cornered me in the cell, he was less patient than usual. "You're spiraling," he said, arms folded tight like he was holding himself together too. "I don't know what you're chasing, Mike, but it's changing you. You talk less, you sleep less, you look like you're about to snap." I told him I'd found Bishop. Kev's eyes narrowed. "That old dude from orientation, you serious? People think he's a ghost." I told him Bishop wasn't a ghost. He was a mirror. One I'd been avoiding my whole life. That shut Kev up for a while. Long enough for Marky to finally look up from his sketches. He'd drawn something new. A staircase leading downward, its steps made of bones. At the bottom, a man was standing in front of a door. His face was mine, but his shadow wasn't. "It's not over, Marky," whispered. "They're watching." I didn't ask who they were. In prison, there's always a they. Guards, gangs, ghosts, secrets. Take your pick. But the next day, I found out just how right Marky was. After lunch, a message was passed to me. No names, just a time, a place. Laundry room, after second shift. It wasn't a request, it was a summons. Kev tried to talk me out of it, said it reeked of a setup. He wasn't wrong, but part of me didn't care. I'd already opened the door to the past, might as well walk through the damn thing. That night, I slipped into the laundry room, heart thudding like a war drum. The machines drowned out most sound, but I could still hear the low hum of voices in the back. 3 men. None of them familiar at first glance until one stepped forward. A man named Trent, used to be one of the lieutenants under me back in the day. Smarter than he looked, always playing both sides. I hadn't seen him since the night before my arrest. He grinned, but there was no warmth in it. "Bloodhound," he said.
Ouch!
"Didn't think you'd come crawling back to the old trail." I told him I wasn't here for nostalgia. Trent leaned closer. "Word is you've been sniffing around ghosts. Asking about Bishop, about Elise." He spat the name like poison. I didn't respond. I just stared, but let him keep talking. "You really don't remember, do you?" he said, voice suddenly cold. "You forget what you did. Or maybe you blocked it out because you couldn't stomach it." He stepped back and pulled something from his jacket. A phone, burned. Old model, broken screen. "This was hers," he said. "Elise. She recorded everything that night. She caught it all. You want answers?" He held the phone out like bait. Then he laughed and tossed it into a nearby industrial washer. Before I could react, The water filled quickly, drowning it before I even reached the door. She was going to ruin everything, he said. You don't remember because someone made sure you wouldn't? My fists clenched. I took one step forward before two of his guys stepped in. For a moment, I thought I'd go down right there in the bleach-slicked floor of the laundry room. But Trent just smirked. Truth costs, Mike, and you ain't paid nearly enough. Then they walked out, leaving me with the drowning remains of a phone and a truth that felt heavier than iron. Someone tampered with my memory. And Elise tried to stop them, but someone made sure she couldn't. The phone stayed in that washer for nearly an hour before the guards finally turned the machines off. I waited nearby like a ghost, silent, still. When the coast was clear, I yanked the door open and pulled out what was left. It was useless. Of course, fried circuitry, a shattered screen, water pouring from its seams. But I couldn't let it go. It was the last thing Elise had touched. Maybe even the last thing she'd used to speak the truth. I wrapped it in a towel and stuffed it deep into my waistband before heading back to the cell. Kev was pacing when I returned. Marky was sitting with his knees pulled to his chest, sketching furiously. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Kev saw the blood on my knuckles from punching the washer door, the look in my eyes like I'd seen something crawl out of my own reflection. They got to you, he said. I didn't deny it. Just nodded, then sat down and pulled out the ruined phone. Laid it flat on my bunk. She recorded it, I said, the night I got arrested. Elise had it all on this. Kev stared at it. Then it wasn't just a setup. Someone cleaned house. Worse, they didn't just clean house. They cleaned me. Someone had erased part of my memory, not in the metaphorical sense. This wasn't some emotional blackout or trauma-fueled lapse. This was targeted, precise, engineered. And now I was starting to think I knew who. There was something about that night I couldn't shake. A hospital room. Lights too bright. Faces too blurry. A voice I couldn't place. And pain sharp, pulsing inside my skull, like someone had opened it and poured the memories out with a ladle. I stood, pacing, my mind spinning like wheels on wet pavement. Medical wing, I muttered. Kev raised an eyebrow. What about it? Something happened to me there, right after my arrest. I wasn't sent straight to county lockup. There was a gap, a full day. They said I was injured during the raid, but no one could tell me what kind of injury. Just ... Head trauma. Kev leaned back against the wall, thinking, they hit you with something? No, I said slowly. I think they opened me. He laughed. What, like brain surgery? But I wasn't joking. They say you can erase memories with trauma. But there's more sophisticated ways, especially if you're in bed with the wrong people. And I was. Back then, I wasn't just running a crew. I was doing jobs for people who didn't like being signed corrupt cops. Small-time government fixers, private contractors. One of them had connections, deep ones. And if Elise recorded something that could have burned it all down, they wouldn't have just killed her. They would have erased the only witness. Me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing flashes, machines beeping, latex gloves, a white coat, not prison, not the streets, something in between, a place for cleaning up messes. At lights out, Marky handed me a new drawing. This time it was a man lying on a table, head cracked open. Wires dangling from the skull like a puppet. I stared at him. You saw this? He didn't answer. But the next morning, during chow, a new face appeared in the mess hall. Older man, civilian clothes. Not a CO, not an inmate. He walked through the room like he didn't belong, and yet no one stopped him, not even the guards. He made one full lap around the perimeter of the hall. And then, as he passed my table, he said a single word under his breath. Cortex. That was it. One word, but it exploded in my brain like a grenade. I stood too fast. My tray clattered to the floor. The guards barked, and I forced myself to sit, heart racing, hands trembling. Because I knew that word. Not from the streets, not from prison. From before. From the hospital. From the table. Cortex was the name of the program, the one they used to erase me. The word echoed in my skull long after the man disappeared. Cortex. I didn't know what it stood for, but I knew what it meant. It was a name like a scar, a marker, a brand that had been burned into me and buried so deep I only now realized it was still bleeding. Kev caught up with me later, after the lockdown caused by my little outburst during chow. He didn't speak at first. Just sat on the edge of his bunk, staring while I paced. "Cortex," I finally said. He didn't respond. I think it was real. Not just a hallucination, not a metaphor, a place, a program, something they used to do something to me, to my memory. Kev exhaled slowly, then leaned forward. "You ever hear of Dr. Glenn?" The name meant nothing at first, but when I looked at him, really looked high, saw the hesitation in his eyes. The weight of something too big to say casually. "I used to call him the janitor," Kiv said, "because when powerful people made a mess, he cleaned it up." That got my attention. He was running something inside the prison system. Black site research buried under fake medical programs, said to be doing trauma rehab. But people who went in came out different, duller. Like someone reached in and scrubbed out the colors in their soul. I sat down. Kev continued, "They say he ran a test project under contract with a company that got absorbed into a federal lab. The name of the project was Cortex." I told him about the man in the mess hall, civilian. No badge, no guards stopped him. The way he circled the room, the way he said the word and vanished. "That was a message," Kev said. "He's telling you the clock's ticking." That night I opened Elisa's notebook again, flipped through every page, looking for something I'd missed. And there it was, teeny, near the edge of one of the sketches, barely legible. M saw Dr. G. After the raid, Elise had known. She'd written it down, probably while I was still unconscious, maybe even before I'd been taken to wherever they worked on me. And suddenly it clicked. That's why she was silenced. She didn't just know what I did. She knew what they did to me. She knew I'd been manipulated. Not just once, systematically. The pieces fell like dominoes. The gaps in my memory, the fear in Dixon's eyes. The way the gang moved on without me, like they'd been waiting for the fall. Bishop Howie said, "I wasn't ready to know. But I was ready now, and I was done being their experiment." In the following days, I started putting together a plan. It started small. Request 2 medical for old files, pretending to struggle with dizziness, short-term memory that bought me time. Then I worked the guards' casual questions, leading conversations, trying to spot who might have been involved, who had history with this so-called Dr. Glenn. One name kept popping up, C.O. Richter. Old, quiet clock puncher. Never raised his voice, never got involved in fights, just did his rounds and went home. But he'd been at the prison for 20 years, and according to a whisper I caught in the showers, he used to work in medical. Before they reassigned him, Marky started drawing him, unprompted. He handed me a sketch one night that chilled me to my bones. It showed a figure standing at the edge of a hospital bed, wearing a CO uniform, one hand on a clipboard, the other inside the man's skull. I asked Marky where he saw it. He looked me in the eye and said, "I didn't see it. I remembered it. I didn't press him. I just tucked the picture into Elisa's notebook and slid it under my mattress." The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was hunting me. And if I didn't find Dr. Glenn first, I had no doubt I'd end up like the others, empty, hollow, erased. The search for Dr. Glenn, or whoever he was, nailed me to a room I'd never noticed before. It was deep in the medical wing, past the rehab area, where inmates went for physical therapy and psych evils. On the map, it was listed as Storage C, but inmates called it something else. The Echo Room. Nobody used it. Nobody spoke of it above a whisper. Rumor was if you were taken there, you came back different. Quieter. Sometimes kinder. ... Gone. Not physically. Just mentally. Like your soul had been drained, and your eyes hadn't caught on yet. I needed a reason to get there. Kev found one. There's a janitor named Lewis, he told me one night, whispering so low even the shadows couldn't hear him. He's harmless. Bit of a hoarder. Caught stealing pain meds. They stuck him on mop duty in the Echo Room last month. Says it gave him head pressure. Then he started painting weird asterisk T on his cell walls. They transferred him to isolation last week. But before he left, he dropped this off. Kev handed me a crumpled piece of gauze. At first it looked like trash, but when I unfolded it, I saw faint red ink etched in the threads. The door hums when it knows you. It sounded like madness, like something Marky would say after a long night of staring at shadows. But I believed it. I got myself reassigned to cleanup duty in medical. Faked a limp. Said my cell needed repairs after a pipe burst. I worked with a guy named Leon Older, scarred up, quiet, We didn't talk. We didn't need to. We mopped. We swept. And then one day, the nurse asked me to move boxes to storage. See, my heart jumped. I played it cool. Sure, no problem. When I reached the hallway that led to the room, it hit me. There was no sound. It's not even the hum of the fluorescent lights. It's a kind of silence that felt heavy, too heavy. It's like sound had been stolen from the air. I stood in front of the door, cold metal. No lock, no window. It's just a dent near the bottom, like someone had tried to kick their way out. And then it happened. Low, subtle vibration under my hand. Like the door was alive, breathing. It knew me. I turned the handle. The room was small, white, sterile, too clean. It's like something sacred or cursed. In the center was a reclined, chair-padded leather, stained. Beside it, a cart of tools. Not surgical, not medical. Things I didn't recognize. Wires, a headset, tray with a needle. Not filled with anything I could name. I walked slowly, trying not to breathe too loud. Then I saw it. Etched into the wall behind the chair, almost invisible under layers of white paint, was a name. Suddenly, something clicked in my head, a sound, a flash of light, the whir of a machine. I dropped to my knees, grabbing my temples. The memory hit me like a bullet. I was in that chair, strapped down, sweating, screaming. A man in a white coat adjusting knobs. "You won't feel a thing, Mr. Reyes," he'd said. Except I had felt it. I just hadn't remembered. Until now. I stumbled back out into the hallway, heart racing. I didn't even realize I was crying until I reached the locker room and saw my face in the mirror. Red eyes, pale skin. Something inside me was screaming, but I wasn't sure if it was grief or rage. They'd taken more than my memory. They'd taken me. Now I knew what Elise had tried to stop, what she'd tried to record, what she'd died for. The truth was buried in this prison. Its name was Cortex. But it wouldn't stay buried for long.
Not anymore.
The next days blurred into one another, prison life carrying on while I carried a storm inside. I couldn't shake the image of that room or the cold voice of Dr. Glenn from my mind, but I had to stay alive. The guards watched me closer now, like I was a bomb waiting to go off, so I stayed calm, played the part of a broken man, less dangerous, more invisible. But inside I was plotting. One afternoon in the yard, Kev pulled me aside near the basketball court. The noise from the game was a welcome cover. "I found someone," he said quietly. "An old-timer who knew Glenn before he went underground. Says the doc was involved in some real dark stuff, mind control experiments, memory wipes, even personality reboots. All hush-hush. Off the books." I leaned in, the sun beating down on my neck. "Name's Carter. Used to be a guard here 20 years ago. Retired now, but still comes by to visit some old friends. If we can get him talking, maybe we can learn more." The yard was a maze of eyes and secrets, but Carter was different. When we found him in the smoker's corner, he looked like a relic from a time before cell phones and tattoos took over the world then. Gray-haired, with a wary gaze that seemed to see right through you. "Dr. Glenn," Carter said, shaking his head. "That man was trouble, the worst kind. The kind you don't want touching your mind." I nodded. "We're trying to figure out what he did to me. 2 others. The project called Cortex." Carter's eyes darkened. "They say Cortex was supposed to be the future. Erase the bad, install the new. But it was a curse. People lost themselves. Some never came back." I swallowed. "What happened to Elise? And to me?" He looked away. "Some truths are better buried." But I pressed on. "I need to know." Carter sighed and leaned closer. There was a night. A raid gone wrong. Elise was there, trying to expose what Glenn's crew was doing. "You got caught in the crossfire. They tried to erase your part in it. It's a real story. The real story." It clicked. But the whole picture was still missing. Before I could ask more, a shout rang out. Guards were coming. Carter glanced around nervously. "You didn't hear it from me?" And just like that, he melted back into the shadows of the yard. That night, as I lay on my bunk, the mysteries churned inside me. I wasn't just a prisoner. I was a target, a ghost in a machine. If I was going to survive, and maybe even make peace with the man I was, I had to find the missing pieces, no matter what it costs. The days that followed were a tightrope walk between survival and discovery. Every glance felt like a judgment. every whisper a secret message. Kev and I shared coded conversations, keeping our eyes open for Carter's next move. But prison was a cage not just of concrete and bars. It was a place where trust was currency and betrayal always lurked nearby. One afternoon, while walking back from the yard, a sudden commotion broke out near the infirmary. A shout, a scuffle, a guard calling for backup. Kev grabbed my arm and pulled me into the shadows beside the laundry room. "Something's up," he said, voice low. We edged closer and spotted Carter again, this time being dragged roughly by 2 guards. His face was pale but defiant. "Kev," I hissed. "They found him." The guards shoved Carter into a small room labeled quarantine. I felt a surge of anger. He'd been silenced, maybe for good, but something else stirred inside me. Fear, guilt, burning need to act. That night, I lay awake, plotting my next move. If they could silence Carter, what chance did I have? But giving up wasn't an option. Elise's voice, Bishop's words, the fragments of my past, they all pushed me forward. The next morning, during rec time, I spotted a familiar figure. A new inmate. Quiet, watching, calculating. He slipped me a note folded tight like a secret. I unfolded it carefully. Just 3 words. "Meet me Wednesday." No name. No place. Just those words. Kev's eyes met mine across the yard. He knew. The mystery was deepening. So was the danger. Wednesday couldn't come soon enough. Every tick of the clock echoed like a heartbeat in my chest. The note burned in my pocket, as if it held the key to everything, the missing pieces. The truth about Cortex. The secrets Elise died for. Maybe even the answer to why I'd really been thrown behind these bars. When the hour arrived, I slipped away from the common area and headed toward the workshop, a place few inmates frequented, and where whispers could be masked by the clatter of tools. The air smelled of sawdust and rust, shadows pooling in the corners like waiting things. There, leaning against the far wall, stood the man who had sent the note. His face was half hidden under a hood. He glanced up, eyes sharp and scanning, like a hunter waiting for his prey. "You Michael Reyes?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. "I know what happened to you," he said, stepping closer. "I know what they did to Elise. They were part of the same project." "How do you know?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. He hesitated, then pulled back his hood. The light hit his face, a face I recognized from a faded photo I'd seen in Elise's notebook. It was Luis, a former tech guy from the gang, long presumed dead or disappeared. "They called me the Ghost Tech," Luis said. "I hacked their systems. I was supposed to keep their secrets, but I couldn't watch them destroy people anymore. Elise found me before she was killed. She gave me what she recorded, and now I'm here to finish what she started." My heart pounded. This was the break I'd been waiting for. Luis handed me a small flash drive hidden in a piece of cloth. It has the data. It's the files on Cortex, the patients, the doctors, even the names of the people who ordered the experiment. I felt the weight of it in my hand, like it was both a weapon and a lifeline. "But you're risking everything," I said. Luis nodded grimly. "Because I want out. Because people like us deserve a second chance." We talked for hours, planning, whispering, piecing together the puzzle of lies and betrayal that had ensnared me and so many others. The prison walls didn't feel so suffocating anymore, not when I had a mission. It's not when I was fighting not just for myself, but for everyone silenced by Cortex. Luce's arrival shifted everything. With the flash drive tucked safely inside my mattress, I began to piece together the fragments of the past. Were spent decoding files on a smuggled tablet Luis had managed to repair, hidden beneath the floorboards. Each document, each photo, each recording chipped away at the lie I'd been living. The files painted a darker picture than I had imagined. Cortex was no ordinary experiment. It was designed to erase not just memories, but identity itself, like a digital lobotomy. The prisoners they selected were test subjects, and the people behind it all were powerful. Federal contractors, rogue agents, and corrupt officials who saw us as disposable. I was their most valuable asset and their biggest mistake. Kev became my closest ally in this silent war. He helped keep watch, distracted the guards, and kept my spirits from breaking. Even Marky, the quiet artist, found hope in the little victories. He started drawing again, the bleak sketches of skulls and shadows, but images of freedom, peace, and light. But the deeper we dug, the more danger crept closer. Luis warned me the flash drive had a kill switch embedded. If anyone tried to access it without the right code, the data would self-destruct. And they were already watching. One evening, Kev was pulled into the warden's office. When he came back, his face was pale and his smile forced. "They know something's up," he whispered. "They're tightening security. No more excuses." I nodded, understanding what that meant. Time was running out. Still, I felt something I hadn't in years: hope. Not just for myself, but for the neighborhoods I once ruled through fear. Maybe one day I'd walk those streets again, not as a gang leader or a prisoner, but as someone who had found peace, someone who could make a difference. But first, I had to survive Cortex. The walls were closing in faster than ever. With every step I took toward the truth, the shadows stretched longer and the threats more real. Luis and I knew the flash drive was a ticking bomb. Every file we uncovered added weight to the secret I'd been carrying all along. The memory gaps, Elise's death, the brutal raid, everything wasn't just bad luck or gang violence. It was engineered. One night, as the prison fell silent, I gathered Kev, Luis, and Marky in the workshop. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Leak the data outside. If the world knew about Cortex, about Dr. Glenn's twisted experiments, maybe the system would crumble from the inside. Maybe the people who suffered would finally get justice. I looked around at these men, once my enemies, now my brothers in this fight. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Whatever happens next," I told them, voice steady, "we're not just survivors. We're the story that needs to be told." The next morning, chaos erupted. Guards raided the workshop, confiscated the tablet and the flash drive. Luis was dragged away, shouting for me to stay strong. Barely escaped, but not without injury. Locked down again, but no longer alone in my head, I carried Elise's notebook, Marky's drawings, and the spark of hope we'd ignited. Months later, I walked out of prison a free man. Not because I'd served my time, but because the story had leaked. The truth had reached ears too loud to ignore. The system had to answer. Back in the neighborhoods I once ruled with fear, I chose a new path. Instead of violence, I brought peace. I spoke at schools, met with families, helped former gang members find a way out. My past haunted me, but forgiveness, both given and received, set me free. The mystery of Cortex, of Dr. Glenn's cruel experiment, wasn't just a prison secret. It was a reminder of how fragile identity is, how easily it can be broken and how strong it can be rebuilt. I was no longer the most feared man in prison. No, I was the man who chose to rise. Stepping out of those prison gates felt like being reborn, but the world outside wasn't the same one I'd left behind. The streets were quieter in some places, louder in others. The faces had changed, but the scars ran just as deep. I wasn't greeted as a hero. Most saw me as the man I used to be, the gang leader, the criminal. Redemption was a long road paved with doubt and suspicion. I started small, volunteering at community centers, sitting down with kids who reminded me of the versions of myself I'd tried so hard to bury. I listened more than I spoke, because real change doesn't come from orders or force. It comes from understanding, from connection. One afternoon, at a local school, a boy named Jamal approached me. His eyes held fear and defiance, the same mix I'd had. "Why should I listen to you? You used to be one of the bad guys." I smiled, feeling the weight of those words, because I've walked that path, and I know where it leads. But I'm not there anymore. I'm here to help you find a better way. Slowly, I built trust, not just with kids, but with families, with former rivals. We started peace talks in neighborhoods where violence had been law for years. The old gangs didn't vanish overnight, but the fighting slowed, the anger turned into dialogue, fear turned into hope. And all the while, the mystery of Cortex lingered in my mind, not just as a past trauma, but as a warning. The real war was for the soul of people like me, like those kids, like everyone trying to reclaim their lives. It was a war against erasure, against being written off. I spoke openly now about forgiveness, not just for others, but for myself. I learned that you can't outrun your past, but you can choose what you become because of it. I was once the most feared man in prison. No. I was a man who fought for peace in the very streets I once terrorized. And that made all the difference. Years later, I find myself standing in front of a crowd at a community center, faces of all ages, some hardened by life, others still fresh and full of promise. I tell them my story, not the gang leader, not the feared inmate, but the man who fell, got broken, and rose again. I talk about forgiveness not as some easy fix, but as a battle, a daily choice. How it started in the darkest cell, with memories erased and pain inflicted, and how it ended on streets full of hope. People listen. Some nod. Others lean in like they're hearing a secret. My past is a shadow, but it no longer controls me. I work with young men and women every day, teaching them that identity is theirs to hold, not something others can steal or rewrite. I help them see that no matter what mistakes you've made or what chains you carry, there's a way forward. Sometimes when I walk those neighborhoods at dusk, I still hear whispers echoes of the man I used to be, but I smile, because I know that the real power isn't in fear or control. It's in forgiveness, in healing, and in fighting to build a future brighter than the past. The mysteries I uncovered in prison, the secrets of Cortex, the lies of those who thought they could erase a man's soul, they remind me that freedom isn't just a physical thing. It's something deeper, something we carry inside. I am Michael, once lost, now found. And this is my story.